All right, we're here with Eric Gallanty, the voice of hockey's on NESN, talking about Boston University competing for the national championship on Saturday against Western Michigan. And Eric, thanks so much for joining us. You've had a chance to cover this team, obviously the rest of hockey's as well. What stands out about this year's Terriers group that is competing for the national championship tomorrow?
I think honestly, the thing that stands out is that they're here, that they're in this game. I mean, it's one thing that we've been talking about all year with them. One thing that Jay Pandolfo has been talking about all year with them is, they were inconsistent early this year and they had a couple things they had to solve. And to their credit, and this is why, a longer season sometimes is fun to watch a team develop. They've solved them, right? They've gotten really good goaltending since Mikhail Yegorov came in, and we'll talk about him in a minute. They took way too many penalties early in the season. They aren't taking penalties anymore. They've cleaned up their penalty kill. Those were the three biggest things that felt like it was holding back one of the most talented teams in the country. And to Jay Pandolfo's credit, to their credit, it feels like they've found an answer for all of those. And it's probably the biggest reason that they're here competing for a national championship.
All Jay Pandolfo does as a player and as a coach is make Frozen Fours, but obviously they want to win it all this year. What did when you had a chance to talk to him this year doing games? What has he said about the hunger of this year's group to kind of finally complete, the path in which they haven't been able to the last couple of years?
And even get to the final, right? Third
Yeah.
straight Frozen Four, but first time in the final. I think, one of the things he talked about earlier this season was really focusing on the details. That's the difference between a team that gets to the Frozen Four and doesn't get over the hump versus the team that does. So that was number one. But it's been really impressive how they've stayed in the fight a bunch of different times. You know, in their own words, they did not play well in the hockey semifinals against UConn. They got beat up pretty good in that game. They did not play well in the first period against Ohio State in their first NCAA tournament game. They got really outplayed. But to their credit, they have stayed in the fight the whole way. And it's a credit to the makeup of this team, to the leadership group, that they were able to get through that and, still be competing at this point.
You mentioned the netminder Mikhail Yegorov, the freshman, and actually last time Boston University won a national championship in 2009, they had a freshman goaltender in net and Kieran Milan. So they have a freshman again in net. What's been the funnest part in your mind about this story and the way it's unfolded with the way he's taken over for this team?
And by the way, that's the last time any freshman has won a national championship game in college hockey. This story is really amazing. I mean, folks may have started to follow along, but just the quick primer on it. Yegorov was in the USHL with Omaha. He's a really highly thought of prospect. He was the second round pick of the Devils. So from that standpoint, it's not totally out of nowhere. But he was in the USHL this year, committed to BU for next fall. They decided to bring him in for second semester. He gets his first start ever on the road against number one Boston College. He plays great in that game in a losing effort, but plays great. And he's just taken off since there. And, he's really helped on the ice. But the biggest thing when you talk about Big Mike, as he likes to be called, is the off the ice stuff. He has an absolutely infectious personality. He just emits this era of he's so excited and so happy to be at Boston University, to be competing there. He's, I think, really added an element to a room from that standpoint off the ice, as well as how good he's been on the ice. And it's really those two things combined has made this just an amazing story that, all of a sudden, 3 or 4 months ago, he's still in the USHL in Omaha, and now he has a chance to win a national championship.
Yeah, pretty incredible stuff. I want to hit on the brothers, Cole and Quid Hudson. They've obviously been a big part of this BU story this year. What has been the thing that has stood out to you the most about the way these two have played this year? And if you have some backstory on them playing this year, we'd love to hear that as well.
Yeah, well, Cole Hudson, certainly, I think the first thing when people saw him this year was, boy, that looks familiar, right? And it looks just like his brother, who's obviously been unbelievable in the NHL this year, Lane Hudson. So those two are both defensemen, right? And Cole is now just a point away from matching Lane's total, I believe it is, as a freshman. He's been so good, so skilled from the back, everything you would expect from that really good offensive D. Quinn Hudson's a little bit of a different case. He's the oldest of the bunch. He's a forward, was undrafted, and kind of maybe overlooked between the three of them that have played at BU so far. They have another brother coming as well. But Quinn Hudson just continues to be a really solid player. He's top 3 nationally in points per game this year, especially with what he's done in the second half of the season. So if it's possible to be, a team's one of their leading scorers and have a little bit of a quieter route to that point, that's Quinn Hudson, but Jay Pandolfo talks about him all the time. He is so important and a little bit unheralded for how good he's been for the Terriers.
What's the X factor tomorrow night for Boston University? What's something that might come into play that they have to be able to execute against Western Michigan?
Yeah, Western Michigan's really good. And, they survived Denver. It's the first time these two teams will be playing. Obviously, Western Michigan had played Denver a bunch this year. I think for BU, it's the stuff that we talked about, right? Can't take penalties. They've been really good at that recently. Can't struggle on the penalty kill if you do get those. Now, obviously, in the playoff game, penalties tend to come down a little bit. But, the thing about this BU team, as much as we talk about their offense and how many star players they have, and, the Isermans and Ryan Green, and we can go on and on and on. When they've been good here the back half of the season, it's their defense, it's their blocking shots, and it's their structure in front of Yegorov. They've allowed 2 goals or less in 13 of 17 games since Yegorov began starting in January. So if they can play that kind of game, Western plays that way too, but that's a really big step for BU to get in the fight, get off to a good start, and try to play that game and not try to run and gun with Western Michigan because that becomes a tall task.
All right, we'll see if the Terriers can finish out the season, win the national championship. Again, they haven't won since 2009, so we'll see what they can do tomorrow night against Western Michigan. Eric Gallanty, thank you so much for the time.
Thanks for having me, Joe.